Fin the Week is brought to you by Indulge, a digital agency built on thinking for the global financial services industry.
Hi there, I'm Amelia.
I'm Paul.
I'm Mayna.
And this is a bonus episode of Fin the Week. Mayna, welcome. First time on the podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Lovely to have you. And both of you have just returned from 2 days on the South Coast at Brighton SEO. So we're recording this special episode to talk about some of the key things that came out of the conference. But to start with, for those who've never been, what makes Brighton SEO so special?
Yeah, so Brighton SEO is, I believe, officially billed as the largest search marketing conference in the world. And it definitely feels like it when you're there. I think the poster when we were there said there's 4,000 attendees. And it's a really big deal, really. It attracts the kind of best and the brightest from the search marketing industry. It's been running for, I'm not sure really, I think since 2010. And it famously started in a room above a pub in Brighton. But I think because of its location, it sort of attracted people to sort of join and spend a couple of days, usually in the sunshine, hearing about everything that's going on in the industry. And it's kind of built up a bit of a cult status where, the search industry and everyone in it sort of look forward to it. I'd say it's probably fair to say world famous event, and it's they run it twice a year in the UK, and they've also recently started running it in San Diego in the US as well. Still called Brighton SEO, so it's a brand in its own right now. And so we spent 2 sunny days in Brighton, hearing everything that's going on in the search industry. We've got lots to sort of chew through today, I think. All of the notes that we've taken.
So that's kind of what it's all about. Have you both been before?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've been going since probably 2011, 2012, something like that. And Mayna, you've been a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah, this was my second time.
So you're both kind of, well, Paul, you're a veteran nearly since the beginning.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a chat through today some of the kind of key takeaways from this year's conference. So what are we going to start with?
Can I start with something?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think we were looking at the schedule for the conference and all the speakers, and AI was in every single talk. And Paul and I kind of sat there like, oh, is everyone just jumping on the buzzword and on the trend? Then after day one, we kind of realised AI is the now, and it's touching every part of SEO. So there's no avoiding it, and it has to be spoken about. So that was a bit of a mindset change we had, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember looking through the schedule, and the sort of my default mode is to be cynical. And I was just expecting, a lot of hype, and a lot of people desperately clinging on to the phrase AI, trying to sort of say something interesting. But no, actually, I was proven wrong really quickly. That everybody we heard from across the conference had something really useful to say about it, and proved that whilst the stats might not follow it just yet, like people visiting websites from AI is quite low still. Really, it's changing the way people search for information, and it's changing our industry for the better, I would say, from all the stuff we've heard. So yeah, and that kind of it leads on actually to one of the first notes I made, which was one of the speakers, Nick Beck from a company called Tug. He said something. He said, "Search is sexy again," which kind of stuck with me because I thought the SEO, the world of SEO became quite tactics driven, and it was all about how do we rank at the top of Google, and there were sort of rules that you would follow and things you were doing. It all became a bit stale in a way. You were just kind of going through the motions. And now that the generative AI is leading to a new way of searching for things, and it's getting results in a different way, it changes the challenge, and it makes the industry much more vibrant again, I would say. People are experimenting with new things and learning new things. And that really kind of resonated with me. I think Mayna, you felt the same, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I started working at Indulge 4 years ago, and the fundamentals of search are the same, but the process and the way it's done is just completely different now.
Yeah, and something else that Nick Beck said in his talk was that his opinion was that brands don't get excluded from the sort of AI-driven search results because they hadn't optimized themselves properly, but it's because AI isn't really advocating for them. And he suggested that AI-driven search is really just looking to serve up the most suitable match for something, based usually on the sort of elements that make up a brand. You know, if you're looking at a product, say, you'd say this TV has the best color contrast and the best screen size and the best energy consumption. And it's trying to serve up genuinely the best answer as opposed to the brand that has optimized itself for search. And I think that's probably a good thing. Well, it's definitely a good thing. It's a good thing
That's
for
what I was going to ask,
consumers.
actually. I was going to say to you, is that a good thing? I mean, you imagine for these brands who've got the money, perhaps, who've always been, the big hitters, but actually for other smaller brands, this is maybe a more exciting time for them.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it gives you the opportunity it incentivizes, I suppose, niching into things and being known as the best for whatever it is you do. And that's what, businesses in general have always succeeded by doing that well and getting that message out. And arguably, if search surfaces these companies more accurately, then that can only be a good thing. As a counterpoint to that, though, another sort of trend that came out was that is it going to destroy the concept of a brand? Does it reduce a brand down to its just component parts? It's sort of like the idea that a brand is experienced by a human, but it's not experienced by an AI bot. A bot would just look at the facts and say, these running shoes have these features compared to these ones. And you think, how a big brand's going to feel about that. But I suspect there's an answer to that. And actually, another kind of follow on from that was that there was a talk that the keynote speaker was someone called Dr. Pete from a company called Moz. Moz has been for a long time a real, I suppose, thought leader, you call it, in the SEO industry. And Dr. Pete in particular is fairly well known to people in the industry. And his view was that we're headed for what he called a hybrid search world, where you wouldn't necessarily rely solely on AI-driven search. You wouldn't go straight to ChatGPT for everything you need. Instead, you would probably go to, let's say Google delivers this. They have a platform where you type in your query and the search would kind of adapt to whatever it is you're looking for. So it might be that you're looking for a map-based result with a bit of context, or it might be that there's shopping results. And so it's not all going to be AI chat search, but a kind of hybrid mix of all of these different methods of search, which again, I find quite exciting, really. But yeah, I don't know how you felt about the sort of way the industry's going from that perspective, Maina, with a fairly sort of, you've seen it over a few years, how it's developed.
Yeah, I think where AI search is at the moment, differentiating your brand is a real key driver. But with the potential future of agentic AI, where you don't even need to look at a website, you can just tell AI, okay, book me this holiday, buy me those shoes, maybe brand will become less important. But we don't know what we don't know. And there was a really good quote actually from one of the speakers, and she was using a card analogy. I think it was like poker or something. And she said, you don't need to know how to play your cards. You just need to know what cards you have in your hand. And I thought that was a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah, definitely. It's, I think nobody, as you say, nobody knows really what's coming next. So it's just about understanding where are we at, what levers can we pull as a business, whatever you do. And ultimately, these tools that are being developed are trying to surface useful answers and information to real people. So the focus still needs to be on how can we be as useful as possible, I think.
And something I've read that you jotted down, Paul, which is amazing, about clicks and sessions are down, right?
Yeah. So this was a really big recurring theme throughout the 2 days at the conference. There were tons of speakers who raised the challenge that we're moving into what they call a zero-click marketing world, where once upon a time you would sort of create a page on your website that you wanted people to land on from Google. So you'd get a click to that page and then they would navigate on from there. So clicks were always the thing you would measure. Whereas now search is becoming much less about sending people to a website. They're trying to, companies like ChatGPT, Google as well, are providing answers directly in the search results. And so clicks are becoming much less likely. So one of the stats from one of the speakers, Jack Lingard, said that 93% of AI searches end without a click. I'm not 100% sure where that stat came from, but I know just anecdotally that is sounds accurate. A lot of the websites that we work with have seen a decline in clicks from search, decline in traffic in general,
I
but
think
not
it
necessarily.
shocked them at first, didn't it? Everyone was a bit like, what's going on? Performance is poor, when that's not the full story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another one was that rank is no longer seen as a key metric by some people. So where once you'd be tracking rankings, that's a less reliable source of performance, a less reliable performance indicator. So I think,
And what would be instead, Paul, if that's the case? How are you measuring the successes?
Yeah, and I mean that is the question. And there was I felt like a lot of the people at the conference who was speaking were almost scrambling for that answer.
Right.
And the place that most people landed was revenue. So the argument was, well, your client is coming to you saying that we're not getting the clicks anymore, we're not getting traffic. And so the answer to that was to sort of say, well, let's look at your revenue performance. Has that gone down as well? And the answer was usually no, it hasn't gone down. So it tells you that the audience is still there, they're still finding you, they're just not traveling straight to your website where you can track them. So yeah, there was a lot of people suggesting that you need to start integrating proper business performance metrics like revenue into the way you track things, which, to be honest, we should always be doing anyway. That's not, that's a good thing to do. Like, there's no point in marketing if you don't know if it's having an impact on the bottom line. So it almost made me chuckle a bit because I thought, well, that was the whole point of what we were doing in the first place. It's just now that you can't track the easy stuff like clicks and traffic, everyone's saying, oh, look, we can monitor the impact on our businesses instead. But that's what the board were always doing anyway.
Do you think that's a hard thing to, for a company like Indulge? Do you find, as we're moving forward and as things are changing, is it hard to get your clients on board of looking at things a different way? Because, for so long they've been, maybe a bit tunnel vision looking at that as a key metric. And now how do you kind of pitch it to them differently and make them see it in a different light?
It is a challenge because things like clicks and traffic to your website have always been shorthand for how things are going. And so what you find is that certainly in larger companies, when you're dealing with a sort of boardroom of people who don't have the time to dig into the metrics, they just want to see the headlines, they've become conditioned to look at traffic reports. And so when those traffic reports start to go in the wrong direction, they can't help but panic and ask what's going wrong. So yeah, there's definitely a sort of challenge there to figure out, well, actually nothing is going wrong really. It's just that the way people are using these tools are changing. And yeah, I haven't yet found the perfect way to sort of pitch that, because we've got the agency client relationship. So if we as the agency say, don't worry, nothing's going wrong, the immediate sort of reaction to that is like, well, you would say that because you get paid if it goes well. But no, I mean, for the most part, people are pragmatic and they can see for themselves that the way search works is changing, and it's moving much more closely to the way classic advertising worked, where you might run a television advertisement and you'd never expect to get direct metrics back from that to be able to see this person saw this ad and therefore bought this product. You never imagine you'd get that. So it's almost making it how it used to be, where you would monitor the impact on the business at a kind of more macro level, you wouldn't really worry about the individual pieces. I think that's the way we're trying to look at it ourselves.
And what else? What are the other things that kind of stood out to you this year?
Something else that got mentioned an awful lot was sentiment analysis. So this was all about, first of all, in the context of if you are mentioned in AI search results, so say ChatGPT mentions your brand, it's not just the case of tracking or knowing when that happens, but also understanding the sentiment behind it and the context behind it. So, I think one of the examples was in the air travel industry. Ryanair might get mentioned a lot or cited a lot in the search results, but a lot of those mentions will come from negative reviews that have been pulled out of something like Trustpilot saying that the customer had a bad experience. So yeah, that's definitely something to watch out for. I think brands are going to have to start thinking about sentiment analysis to understand being cited in an AI-driven search result isn't necessarily the end result that we want. It's knowing is it in the way we need it to be.
And what's this idea of AI speeding up bad news?
Yeah, this one I thought was interesting. So as a speaker, Claudia O'Shea, who was talking about this, and it got me thinking about. So yeah, if you've got lots of bad reviews, for instance, AI is really good at sort of understanding that. And if somebody then searches for something about how good is this company, and you've been inundated with bad reviews, because our AI is going to have that perception of you and therefore tell that story. So it sort of scales up how fast that stuff can spread, I think. But then also, interestingly, it got me thinking about there's a part of the SEO industry that specializes in suppressing bad news stories. So, for instance, in the finance industry, I know that when the Panama Papers story broke, there were firms caught up in that who had connections to it, and they will have, if you Googled their name, you will have found the Google results listed out all of these news stories talking about them in relation to this negative news event. And so companies like that would have potentially paid specialist companies to sort of suppress that news by filling the search results with good news. And that was a relatively easy thing to do, because you could just, as long as you published enough stuff on enough credible places that got in the way of the bad news, then you'd fill up the 10 links on the first page of Google and that was job done. Whereas now it's a completely different challenge. You have to change the perception of an AI engine's brain, basically. You need to convince that AI bot that that we're not bad, we're good. And I think that's probably, I don't know, it must be a good thing for consumers as long as the AI agents get the right picture.
I think search is becoming more honest, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, and there's going to be quality challenges along the way. I'm sure there'll be another thing that we'll probably get onto is that managing your data is important. So if you've got old PDFs on your website that you haven't cleared up, there's a good chance AI will have hoovered those up and will be quoting things from those PDFs that are just out of date. And so, yeah, it's honest, but to a fault, I suppose, because it might pick up old stuff that it just doesn't figure in that is out of date now. So yeah, I think that is an interesting area. But yeah, sentiment analysis was a term that came up time and again as part of people's tracking processes.
I think like another key principle that was mentioned quite a few times on the topic of sentiment analysis is the growing importance of social proof and PR. Because AI doesn't just pull information from your website, it will pull information from as many sources as possible. Reddit is a huge one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think a lot of what was spoken about definitely fed into the hands of proper PR companies who do a good job of making sure your story is told properly in the right places. And if you get that right, that goes a long way.
So let's talk query fan out. This is interesting. So AI is essentially asking 2 to 10 sub-queries on the user's behalf.
It's something
Yeah.
we'd never heard of before, really. Well, we knew the concept, but we'd never heard the terminology.
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
you surprised
Yeah.
by that?
Well, it all
Well,
made sense.
Yeah.
yeah, I'd never properly thought about the mechanics of it. So, but yeah, it was one of those things that when you heard it, like we heard the name it was given, query fan out, heard descriptions of what it is, and it's sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's how I probably imagine it works. But I never really gave it a name myself. But essentially, yeah, it was. Again, this was a real heavy theme throughout the 2 days. But query fan out is the concept that when you type something into something like ChatGPT, the system behind the scenes will fan out that query in the sense that it will go and ask sub questions on your behalf. So it will ask things relating to what you actually asked in order to draw together all of the information it needs to then create an answer for you that not only covers what you've asked it, but also maybe suggests sub areas for you to consider or to look into. And the reason it's relevant for the search industry particularly is because keyword research is the bread and butter of what we do. When we're starting a piece of work, we almost always run around keyword research to use tools that are online to tell us what are people searching for when they go to Google or Bing. What are they typing in? And there's data you can extract on that. And in the past, it would have been a case of identifying the most popular search terms in a particular area to understand, okay, this is what we need this website to be visible for. Whereas now people are sort of extending what they're searching for. They're asking more nuanced questions, and the AI system behind the scenes is going even further with that and asking sub questions. And so the research you have to do has to become more strategic, I suppose, was the takeaway. Did you get that sense as well, Maynard? Rather than sort of finding lists of words, you're needing to find a topic and then understanding the subtopics that sit below that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the analogies that was used was barbecues. When people search for a barbecue, they don't or if a business is selling barbecues, you do thought leadership pieces around barbecue cleaning and best barbecue tools and just related topics.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's becoming, it's thinking a few steps ahead, I suppose, is the way to sort of put it. You're sort of thinking somebody who wants to buy a barbecue, what else will they be thinking about or will they need to think about in the near future, and getting a few steps ahead. And that's another interesting concept. And it's always been a good rule of thumb for content marketing and SEO. It's to sort of really dive deep into a topic, understand the intent behind a search. Like what's a person really trying to get at here? If I'm looking for an insurance product, for instance, what are the other things that person needs to be thinking about? But I think this kind of ups the ante for that. This concept of query fan out means that somebody will, just by using an AI-driven search engine, will find far more information than they ever would have done on their own, just because of the way it works. So I think for people listening to this, expect to hear the phrase query fan out a lot more from now, because it's a concept that the industry's really kind of hooked on to.
Let's talk about bias, because this is something we've talked about on the podcast before, haven't we, Paul? What was kind of the takeaway when it comes to bias?
Yeah, this was one of my favorite talks, actually. It was a lady called Azahara Corrales. Believe she's a Spanish journalist, but she gathered together pieces of research into bias. It was just really shocking. First thing was the AI industry, the people who work in that industry, it's a 70-30 split between male and female. So it's heavily biased towards men working in that industry. So one of the things she said was it's just not being developed by a diverse group of people. She referenced a study into some Facebook campaigns where there were lots of things like about how likely it was. So they ran, say, 2 recruitment ads, one with a picture of a white person, one with a picture of a black person, and there was, I can't remember the specific stats, so I can't really do it justice, but essentially it heavily weighted towards one race and not the other. in what it showed to people. And then another thing was that the Facebook campaigns were far more likely to show images of younger females to men, and the older the person, the older the female in the ad image was, the less likely it was to be shown to a man. So it was really
Shocking.
just, it was really just, you know, a badly balanced system. And then there were other things like, so how AI is used. It's currently used. It was roughly 70-30 again. Like, so the people using AI day to day is very heavily geared towards men. Men are far more likely to be using it day to day than women. And the problem with that is that AI is essentially, a lot of the AI tools people use are sort of machine learning tools. It's a learning technology that responds to how people use it. And if the only people, or if the majority of people using it are heavily skewed in one direction, then it's going to sort of optimize itself for that part of society and not the rest. So yeah, and then I think there was also research that suggested female-dominated roles in work are more at risk of AI disruption than male-dominated roles. So yeah, the whole thing was just eye-opening and worrying and warranting a lot more research, I would say.
I was going to say, I mean, this is a big question, but I was going to say, what do you think the answer is to this? Sorry, Paul, I'm not putting that all on you. Come on with a solution.
Yeah, I think it's well, it needs. I suppose it's one of those ones that needs manual intervention. It's because I suppose a lot of business technology is just, it happens fairly organically. You kind of recruit a team and you build it to the best of your abilities. But I think sometimes things need manual correction. They need someone somewhere with accountability to sort of say, we have a duty to make sure this goes in the right direction. Similar to the advertising industry, actually, where the regulators in the UK certainly place emphasis on making sure that adverts, not only give an accurate portrayal of whatever it is you're advertising, but they also show diversity. And I suppose the real life examples of that would be if you're showing an engineer in an advert, it wouldn't always just have to be a male in a white coat or something like that. It would be a diverse range of people who represent the role of an engineer, and the same for doctors and the same for nurses. A nurse in an advert doesn't always need to be a female, because I suppose the way I always try and think of that is, if I was a 5-year-old, how would I learn what a nurse is or what a doctor is? What gives me that understanding? And quite often it's the adverts you see on TV and stuff like that. So I think it needs that sort of manual intervention to make sure that the people working on it, the rules they're setting, the way they're testing it, has to actively feed this stuff into it, because it won't just happen naturally.
Yeah, were you in that talk as well, Maina? Did you?
It was quite shocking.
Yeah.
Very
really
real,
is.
though. I think there was another example where AI was asked to match a bunch of words, doctor, family, cleaning, just examples like that, with a gender. And I mean, you can kind of guess the matches that it set. I also think, as well as human intervention, not just from the companies training this data and creating these platforms, it's the noise we as a public make about the bias we see when we use these platforms. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because I, sort of coming in really naively to this topic, you think, oh, all the problems with bias and all the problems with underrepresentation, these are all human man-made things. And you think, oh, if you put a bot in charge, those things will go. But actually, it's not the case.
It kind of amplifies it.
Yeah. That's definitely the word, actually, amplify. It amplifies a lot of bad things. If there's a bad thing in the system, it makes it go far. And so that's true of bias. It's true of false facts, like hallucinations, as we call them. It spreads it far and wide.
So it's so important when you're using these tools just to be so hyper aware of it. So what else? Is there anything else that you want to discuss? Any other big kind of topics that you kind of picked up on?
Well, yeah, one thing I really liked was I think it was Chris Walsh from a company IDHL. He brought up the the definition of the word media, and it's a means of communication. And he made the argument that search used to give us access to media. So you would go to Google and you would search for something, and that would send you to media. Whereas now, because of AI and the way it can generate things for you, search has become a media in its own right. And that, I think that for me, that was a bit of a light bulb moment, because I thought actually that really describes what's going on in our industry. It used to be like Google was just the yellow pages on speed, really. It was like you would just open it up and find what you're looking for and then move on. Whereas now it's an actual resource in its own right. It's like the best encyclopedia you've ever had access to. And I think that sort of covers why you're seeing a drop off in traffic and clicks, because people are going to ChatGPT and Google as well, which is now a lot like an AI chat interface in its own right. They're going there to actually find information, read it directly on there, ask follow-up questions via that, and potentially never go elsewhere to find the information. It's just they'll get their answer there and then, and that's it. So yeah, search is media in its own right now, and I think that's something that brands will have to get comfortable with.
Yeah, because traditional search, it's sort of you put something in the search bar and then it just points you in the right direction, and you have the option to choose where you want to get your information from. But with AI search, it's presented to you rather than leading you in a direction. So
yeah, and I think other things were I made some other notes. So it was about another concept that came up time and again was that the user journey is complicated. So what that basically means is if somebody decides they're interested in a particular subject or they want to buy a particular thing, they almost never search for that thing, go to the website and find out what they need and then purchase or take action, whatever. It's more like they would sort of remember at a random point in time that they wanted to look into something. They pick up their phone, they might ask ChatGPT, they'll learn something about it, and then later on that day, while they're in a quiet moment at work, they go to Google and learn about it. Then they might follow a company on TikTok, and then over the course of the next few weeks, they might see stuff coming up on TikTok, which would then prompt them to search again. And like, so the journey from the sort of idea of something through to actually becoming a customer of someone is very long, very complicated. And that's almost universal, I'd say, like for everything. Anything that's other than a commodity, I suppose, it follows that journey. And that's really interesting because I can see that in myself, the way I search for things. Like I'm always doing that with different things. I've always got something on the go that's bubbling away in the back of my mind. And I think that's a really important thing it's an uncomfortable truth that brands need to get comfortable with. So the finance industry where we work, journeys are complicated anyway. And I think getting really comfortable with that is important because it means actually, whilst using a diverse range of channels like TikTok and Instagram and whatever else might seem weird when you're within an organization, but actually if you picture how a real person learns things, it makes a lot of sense to spread your message out across a range of different things and not expect somebody to just respond straight away, but actually be quite strategic with it and just share useful stuff. But I definitely got that sense from the event. I don't know what you thought, Maina.
Yeah, I mean, something that one of the biggest marketing principles I was taught about it in school and everything, the marketing funnel. It's down like that. It's not anymore. The stages of the funnel are the same, but the shape is not. It's more like a spider diagram. Everyone's coming from everywhere. You can't really attribute sources anymore. So yeah, it's definitely changing the game.
Yeah. Attribution was a phrase mentioned a lot in that you can't attribution just isn't possible anymore. So in the old days, you could like say person X landed on our website, they viewed these number of pages and then they signed up. That's just impossible now. I like to think that you can track like that anymore. I think anybody who thinks they can track that is probably fooling themselves, because really, because of privacy laws, because of the way that journey is so complicated now, it's just not possible to track like that. So And again, I think that's a good thing. I think it leads to longer term thinking for brands and their marketing, because they think actually this isn't about a quick win. It's about making sure our brand and our message is clear and well positioned. So again, another reason to be excited, I think.
So some really interesting takeaways there. And, we've spoken before about the rapid speed at which AI is changing the game. So it'll be really interesting to see, 12 months from now, what we're looking at this time next year. But thank you so much, Maina. So nice to have you on. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
I hope so too. It's been a pleasure.
That is it for our special episode. But we'll be back on Friday. See you then.
Before we go, it's time for a quick shameless plug. This episode was brought to you by Indulge, a digital agency built on thinking for the global financial services sector. If you're looking for an agency that can specialise in UX and design, production and marketing, then look no further. To find out more, visit indulge.digital. Thanks for listening.